Okay, so for the last month, I've been smack dab in the middle of this ninjas and pajamas controversy that you might have heard about. I've spoken with players like Fifflaren, Xizt, Friberg and Draken, and they've told me things from not being paid prize money, taxes not being filed, and just general shady behavior. But here's the thing. Last week, I spoke with NiP management for 2 hours on the record, and according to them, there's a logical explanation for all of this. Okay, so that 2-hour interview, that was with Hisham, NiP's current CEO. But who is Hisham? Well, he's the guy that's been catching a lot of flack this past month over allegations that the players have been flying around.
The frustrating part on my end has been to sit on the sideline and observe how this has gone. In particular, given that we in 2016 with previous management, when we had the whole cleanup during that phase, signed NDA with previous management. So when you're sitting there and all of this are going on and you have all these things you want to say, your hands are tied because you want to respect those agreements you put in place. The community conversation in that sense is actually fair.
I also talked with NiP co-founder Emil Christensen. You guys probably know him as HeatoN, the legendary CS 1.6 player. He basically denies all of the allegations that we're about to get into, so just keep that in mind as we move through this story.
Well, first of all, my first expression was to save NiP. That's my whole legacy and that's everything I did. If I did something wrong during this, I did probably a lot of things wrong during this, but my only intention was to save NiP so the company could live on, the name could live on, and the players could keep getting a salary to play. That was my only intention ever.
There have been some pretty wild allegations when it comes to contracts. Things like girlfriend applications, $20,000 fines, and players being benched for who fucking knows how long.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's true from the time that they were running the company. I can say though that there is no rule that you can't have a girlfriend at NiP today. But what I know the team has done at occasions is if they're playing in major, they don't want girlfriends staying with the players at the hotels, right? When I reviewed the old contracts, because I have access to them, and when I came in, we were still on the old contract templates, which I was like, okay, this is the last time we sign on this contract. They were done at a time where esports wasn't at the level it is today. It was still very unprofessional. The biggest flaw in those contracts, when I reviewed them and looked at them, is that they're not consistent. Like if you point out specific clause, you're mentioning the 20K fine clause as an example. Let's say that you are a player, you're signed on a salary. In proportion to your salary, that might be a very high amount. The way we do it today is that you have for minor breaches, right? And those are very small amounts. It's more like a little slap on the hands. And that is how it should be done.
I also talked with HeatoN about these contract clauses, and he denies ever being involved in the process of or signing those player contracts.
I was never in charge of any contracts, never did them myself because I'm a gamer and I play games and I was a public figure out, but behind the curtains, I didn't do anything really.
Okay, so we got the contracts out of the way. Now, this whole ninjas in pajamas shit show actually began with an emergency meeting the players were called to in December of 2013. Okay, so in this weird ass meeting, the players were not only told that then CEO Nicholas Fleischer had fled to Thailand with the team's prize money, none of that prize money had been taxed yet. But according to Friberg, that emergency meeting was even crazier than we initially thought. Because apparently the players were told that if they didn't re-sign right then and there, the investors that were brought in to save the company would leave.
I think Robin was a bit too nice. They literally told us that we will get a big tax debt, and they almost tried to force us into signing the contract while in the house and saying that if you leave without signing the contract, the offer is gone. Like the offer doesn't stand anymore. So they kind of like put us in this position where like we were shocked and like, wow, like where is all our money gone? We will get a tax debt. And they literally said, yeah, but if you don't leave today, your offer or our offer is gone. And like you're left in the dirt, basically.
When we asked HeatoN about this, he just said it never happened.
I mean, this is 6 or 7 years ago, but I mean, my purpose for everything was obviously to save the guys' assets for the situation that Niklas has put them in. And obviously, when I found somebody who could cover it up for them, I would have to say it's pretty nice because he really put both the players and me in a really tough situation.
Now, here's where Hisham comes into the picture. He was the new money guy that was supposed to save NiP heading into 2014.
In 2013, I did a lot with Emil, and one day in 2014, I get a phone call from Robert saying that, hey, Hisham, I need to talk to you about something serious. NiP is in trouble. The old CEO of NiP has essentially taken all the money from the company and fled to Thailand, and we need to help Emil. That is how NiP really came up. Obviously, I've been an NiP fan my whole life, but it wasn't something I was actively pursuing at the time. It was just really cool. Even though it was a very unfortunate situation and I felt really bad for Emil and I felt bad for the players, it was just like, okay, it's an opportunity to get involved and hopefully give them the right financing and the right capitalization and resources, and maybe help and contribute for them to not get into the situation they had in 2014 again.
Now, Hisham comes in, gets told about the alleged stolen prize money, and doesn't question it, because to him, that's not what's important. What's important is trying to fix this situation.
Robert and I had been working together, and that working relationship was great, right? So I kind of, over those years, had built up trust. Right, I was also very young at the age. I saw him as the more experienced guy that kind of drove what we did with the gunner business forward. So when he came to me and said, this is how it is, I didn't really question it, right? I just thought really, oh shit, that is really bad.
And Hisham says that the idea he would ever pull his investment if things weren't moving fast enough is ridiculous. Now, Hisham did state that he and NiP promised to pay the tax fees if the players got in trouble, while also working with an auditing firm to sort out the financial mess that the company was in.
Okay guys, we will do a guarantee for you if this is going to happen in 2014, 15 and 16, where they actually come after you for that. We are going to guarantee that amount for you guys so you can focus on competing and doing your best, right? So it was more about giving them this security. From our end, paid and hired one of Sweden's largest auditor firms, which is called Mazars, to deal on behalf of all the players with the Swedish tax authorities in the private cases, as it was difficult for players to handle their private income taxes, right? The old management and the old company hadn't educated them in the process of what it entails to have your private income declaration. You might have done all sorts of various things as a player and get income paid directly to you privately, which they hadn't filed in their private income taxes because people hadn't simply educated them on how to do that, right?
He also said that NiP paying the taxes was not supposed to be looked at as a pressuring tactic, but more as a goodwill gesture and an incentive to stay with the organization.
That was never used as like a pressuring method to sign contract. For me, it was more a gesture. Look at it more as a signing incentive, right? Guys, I had nothing to do with Stockholm esports production, but I want you to come over and continue NiP with us. And I don't want you to think or worry about the tax situation. You guys should be out there at events, on the servers, practicing and focusing on your game, and know that if something happens, that's taken care of.
When I talked to HeatoN about the financial issues the company was having, he denied anything to do with the paperwork and pointed to Fischer as the one responsible.
I really didn't. I had a full-time job working at SteelSeries while Niklas ran the company. I never worked. I was only posting on pictures, but behind the curtains, Niklas was doing everything.
Okay, so we're done with the taxes. Everybody still with me? Okay, so all of this shit happened prior to Hisham becoming NiP's official CEO in 2016. But according to Fifflaren, while he might not have officially been CEO, Hisham was definitely involved prior to 2016. Now, Hisham has been adamant that this isn't the case and told me as much in our interview.
The community perception is that I was much more involved than I was. But as an investor, it was projects, right, that we had going on. I would, in the initial phase, be very involved in, okay, let's set up the company, the legal documents, you guys have a bank account, like banal things like this. I would be consulted when we did big projects. So for instance, when we established Extrafy Gaming, that is a very big decision for a company. Of course, I was involved in that. I also had frequent calls with management, but those would happen on more of a weekly or monthly basis. right? So it was not this day-to-day management down into the details, dealing with players, accounting, salaries, prize monies. They're going to events, to tournaments. It wasn't this level of management.
I also asked Hisham about having majority voting control of the board, and he chalked it up to protecting his investment.
If something would come along in the future when we went 2-3 years, you always had the opportunity to make sure your money was safe. In Sweden, in order to run a company solely on yourself, you need majority voting, and that is 66.67% to be specific. But when you have a 60% voting power, you can always say no. So it was, in the sense, minority ownership. Emil was majority owner of the company, and the voting power in the technical aspect gave me the opportunity to just stop things I wasn't comfortable with.
Now, when I talked with Friberg and Xizt, they told me that the issues with HeatoN and NiP management extended well into 2015, and it got to the point where Friberg says there was an us versus them mentality.
For example, we told them we never wanted a skin gambling site, because there was a lot of skin gambling happening in CSGO back then, where a lot of, like, especially young people, it wasn't really restricted. It was people under 18 who was gambling, throwing away money. We were big role models for a lot of people in Sweden and globally, I guess, as well, that played CS, and we didn't really want anything to do with that. So we told them, don't get any skin sponsor. We were at the tournament in Montreal in ESWC, and I remember that we got a call from HeatoN in Paris telling us that they have gotten a skin sponsor now, and we really just went against that. We said, like, we told you guys we don't want anything to do with it. We don't want to, like, put our names on this that could go out to people who are underage and still could gamble. But they told us, like, the contracts are already signed. You can't do anything about it.
Xizt echoed that not only did they want nothing to do with this sponsorship, they didn't even see any of the money after the fact.
We didn't have that much of salary then, and we kind of thought, like, hey, we just got this huge sponsor, shouldn't it, like, increase our salary as well, not just management. But they basically just told us, just read your contract, you have 2 more years or whatever it was at the time, and we don't want to discuss anything. Like, yeah, we weren't treated so good, I think.
And when Friberg was trying to leave NiP, the issues got worse.
You had a lot of issues getting, for example, prize money and everything like that. They were trying to find loopholes in the contract, because even those contracts were not perfect either. So they kind of, like, screwed us over.
According to Friberg, there was a clause in their contract that stated they had to stream for up to 10 hours every month. But when we talked to him and Xizt, they said some months their travel schedule and practice schedule was so intense, they couldn't meet that stipulation.
We were not able to do that. We were traveling so much, and when we came home after tournament, we were practicing and everything like that. But I was streaming a little bit, but I probably didn't reach the 10 hours point. And after leaving NiP, Hisham then said, oh, we will pay you all the prize money and everything.
But according to Friberg, when he went to Hisham to ask about the prize money he was owed from Star Ladder Kiev, he was met with a different story.
Hisham came to me like a few months later saying, we will not be able to pay the prize money unless you stream in the hours that you have missed. And apparently it was a lot of hours. And he told me that they would fine me with, I think it was $25,000, which was the same amount of money that they owed me, or still owe me today, that I haven't streamed in. Then I contacted the other guys. I was asking them, like, during this period, like, have you guys gotten paid from this tournament? It's been a really long time now. Like, the money surely must have been there. And they said, yeah, we got paid a few months ago with this. And I asked all 4 of them, and all 4, it was only me who didn't get my prize money. And that was because I was the only guy who wasn't on a team anymore.
Now, when I asked Hisham about Friberg's situation, Hisham told me that Friberg owed NiP more money in lost streaming time than NiP actually owed him in prize money.
The players, when we had a dialogue with them over the years, there was a month or 2 where they weren't required to stream. It was either a major qualifier or something, but they always neglected doing it. And in Friberg's case, when I received the Twitch statistics, you're talking about 14 consecutive months without streaming, and you're talking about 10 hours, which is 2 hours a week, a little bit over. So when you are breaching that contract so evidently in that way, and you are actually in that period asked to stream, there were several occasions where I brought up that you guys have to stream. And if you look at the total difference between what he was deducted as penalties, because it's very simple mathematics, it is your hours, amount of months, there's a fixed price in the Twitch agreement, you can time those together and you will get an amount. That amount you get is significantly higher than what he was deducted.
I also asked Hisham how and why Friberg's prize money was in any way connected to his inability to stream. Because to my understanding, that was never written anywhere into the player contracts that they signed.
In the contract, it is not defined if it's salary, prize money, or something that comes after. In the contract, it is defined, and the contracts that we have today are done by CMS, which also does the contracts for Bundesliga in Germany with football. So for us, when we went through the legal process with the legal agency that developed these contracts for us, it is not specified how you are doing it to the detail in the recipe. It is still a debt that the company had to Friberg. So we decided to withhold that and not pursue for further, because the amount that we could have, when you look at the further damages proportion on reclaim, that was much higher the amount.
Now, after talking with Friberg, I also spoke to Xizt, who told me about his own issues trying to leave NiP. Specifically, that when he was benched, Fnatic came to him with an offer, but according to Xizt, Hisham told him that the only way he was going to be allowed to leave NiP was that if he forfeited the prize money the organization owed him.
So I got benched, and time goes by and I get offers from different teams, and in the end I chose to go with FaZe. I think they had a really good offer for me and I wanted to play with their players. So the whole negotiation took a long time, and in the end Hisham tells me like everything is done, but you have to give up your prize winnings that I still have with NiP. I believe it was IM Oakland 2017 which we won, so it was kind of much money. Hisham is just blaming other board members. It's not his doing and he would never want to keep me hostage in my contract.
And after speaking with Xizt, my final interview was with Draken, who discussed his own issues trying to leave NiP in 2017.
They benched me and they basically said we can't let you go to Fnatic if you don't leave your prize money, which was 12.8, so like $12K.
According to Hisham, the reason why Xizt and Draken were asked to give up their prize money was because the offers that came in from different teams were ridiculously low. Instead of telling the players that they had to sit on the bench until NiP received a better offer, Hisham reportedly tried to come up with a creative solution to release the players from their contracts.
So Fnatic had an interest in Xizt, we had the negotiations, they came back with an offer which was very low. We cannot release Xizt for this amount to Fnatic. I was quite fair and open with it. So I was like, you have the opportunity to stay on the bench here and get paid your full salary. The discussions continued a little bit. I went back on my end and thought, okay, is there a situation where we can let him go? So I went back to Xizt and I said, I've thought about a deal that we can propose, but you have to take your decision yourself. And after a little bit talking about how it would work practically, he said okay to that. So we said, okay, we'll do this then. I'll speak to Fnatic, see if we can get the last piece finalized. You start speaking with them of your contract. But I never pressured him and told him this is how we're gonna do it. You either stay on the bench, you can fill salary, or this is like the creative way I can get around it for us to be somewhat content as well with the outcome of this. So we did that deal. We finalized with Fnatic the terms, and then they started winning. So they went over to win WESG, they won Katowice, and then the Xizt agreement fell through because obviously they didn't want to do the changes. And that's when FaZe reached out. So I said to Xizt, we can do FaZe if you want to, on the same terms.
So listen, I talked to this dude for 2.5 hours, and he answered every single question that I had. And we discussed almost every single allegation that's been floating out there for the past month. To me as a journalist, I thought it was super important that not only the players get their perspective told, but Hisham and NiP management have their perspective told. And so towards the end of this 2-hour interview, I basically told him, hey, the floor is yours. Please, if there's anything that you want to discuss or tell us on the record, now's your chance. And here's what he told me.
It has been a rough couple of 3 weeks for us, and everyone here is taking this situations very seriously. We're taking it a lot to heart. I want the fans that sit on the outside and look into this to understand that we are doing everything that we're doing in order to resolve every single case that is coming in. In total now we have 10 cases that has come in. There's only one left to resolve, which we hope we will be resolving very soon. And to sit here today, it feels, especially when we go through the cases and we talk about what has happened, it feels very unfair and unjust. I hope that we internally now take this and make it better from here. Not just for things to not happen in the future, but also to improve everything else we're doing. So that is the main objective for me. And I also hope that we are able to close this chapter in not too long and get back to competing and entertaining fans and making them happy and seeing our players lift trophies again.
Thanks for watching. If you want more content like this, hit the sub button and ring that notification bell. For unique bite-sized videos you won't find anywhere else, hit up our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook pages.